Welcome. All right, parents. Hey, we welcome you tonight. I'm super excited to have you. My name is Gary Steffes, and I am a good friend of Mike Selikin. And that's kind of how I got connected into the Dallas Stars girls side to the sport. But I played professional hockey for about 7 to 10 years, and a large part of my career was in Allen, actually. And so I have Dallas in my blood. I love Dallas, and have a huge heart for the city, huge heart for the organizations that are local and present, from the Dallas Stars Elite to the Texas Tigers and to McKinney North Stars and everybody else that's in town there. So I have a huge heart for that, and with that, just through all my playing career and all the things I've done, I have a huge heart for parents as well, because what you men and women are doing for your kids right now is extraordinary. And I commend you, the effort, the sacrifice, the things that you are doing as a parent, truly incredible. And I think about my story in all the years that I played. I don't think I really clued in to just how sacrificial and committed and amazing my parents were until I was probably in my 20s, partway into my pro career, looking back going, there is no way I could ever be where I'm at today if it hadn't been for the sacrifices my parents made, going to work, driving an hour home to pick me up, and then driving back down to practice, and just all the sacrifices, the finances, the tournaments, the trips that we made, the equipment. I mean, just my parents dealing with all the equipment stuff and new sticks and new skates, and having to deal with me growing. And I'm so thankful, and so I commend you, parents. And so with all of the things that you all are doing, there's a ton of stresses and pressures that you feel. There are things that you wrestle, trying to help your kids be the best they can possibly be, and pushing them through this ground of elite sports, and what does it look like, and how do we do it well, and how do we help our kids make the next level, but at the same time love our kids unconditionally, and when do we speak into their life and kind of be an encouraging coach, and when do we just need to let off the gas and be a parent, and how do we navigate all that stuff, and the drama of sports, and the politics that we can feel, and the frustrations that can come. And there are so many ups and downs as a parent, and a lot of things that we have to navigate and wrestle, and you're putting a lot of money and time into it. And so tonight, what Mike Selikin and I, when we got together and we talked, we had the idea of how can we encourage and speak life into the parents and help support you all with what you're doing. And as soon as we had that conversation, the first person that came to my mind is one of my great friends and mentors, John Olver. And I'll introduce Jo in just a second, and what an impact he's had on me, and just kind of his story and where he comes from. But I wanted to invite him because he can relate on a very real level. He's coached for over 35 years, 40 years, all over the place, from the pro level down to the junior level to the youth level. He's coached at the highest of levels. I'm going to read off his story in just a second. But he also has raised two boys that are playing in the highest levels too, the NHL, the American League, the highest levels of Europe. And so here's a guy that knows elite sports, and a man that knows not just how to coach and play in that, but also how to raise kids who have been there, and all the stresses and all the pressures that come with that. And as a coach of a youth sports organization too, realizing the struggles of parents today, even from a coaching standpoint. So my hope is that today we can speak life to your soul, that we can encourage you, we can give you some guidance, some encouragement, just some things about Jo's story, and some things that he and I have learned through our day to hopefully help you as parents and do this. And so we're going to dive in. One of the things that I do, so I run an encouragement ministry currently, and I work with ministries and teams, athletics, marketplace, all over the country. And I speak life into people's souls and teams and organizations. And so I'll work with universities all the way down to youth level teams. And so my role across this country is doing things and speaking life into people. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is I invite the Lord into the time that we do things Just so if it's okay with you, I'd love to invite the Lord into this time and just ask him to bless it. And so if you're not a Christian, please just honor us and do this. But if you are, you can join me. I'm just going to invite the Lord into our time and just ask him to bless it, because I truly believe that when we invite him in, things are just better. And so if it's okay with you, I'm going to do that real quick. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time. I thank you for this amazing blessing to be with all these parents tonight. And Lord, I pray that you would, when we invite you in, I pray that you would bless this time and that you would speak, that you would encourage our souls and help all of these parents with whatever the things they are struggling with. Just, I pray you'd speak to their hearts tonight and encourage them and bless them. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, friends. So let me introduce J.O. and a little bit about his story. And I'll just read off a couple things that about my friend and mentor. So he's a native of Burnaby, British Columbia. And from his own playing career back in the late 70s, he ended up playing in the NCAA. He played for the University of Michigan. Back in the day, he was drafted by the Colorado Rockies in 1978. And so he knows what it's like to be an elite athlete. And then from there, he transferred into coaching and has coached now for 35 to 40 years at the pro, the college, and the junior level. And in that time, I found this really cool, J.O. I didn't know this about you. It's fascinating, but he was the head coach of the WCHL. Is it the Western? What's the
Coast Hockey League?
West Coast Hockey League. That's right. The West Coast Hockey League and the ECHL, the East Coast Hockey League. For all these years, he's the only coach to win a title in both leagues. I didn't know that, J.O. That's amazing. Only coach.
The West Coast Hockey League doesn't exist anymore, so that record will be tough to be broken.
It's a hard one to be broken. Yeah. So yeah, and with that, the West Coast Hockey League, you were the coach of the year 4 times. You also coached at the Northern Michigan University, the Idaho Junior Steelheads, most recently the North Star Knights, an incredible organization up in Minnesota. There's the John Olver Character Coach Award that's been named after you, which what an honor. And with that, you have 2 sons that have played. Darren was a 2nd-round draft pick to the New York Rangers, who played 13 years in the DEL at the top league in Germany. And then Mark, your other son, who played 12 years professionally, is still playing. He's in the American League, the NHL, and is currently in the DEL in Germany. And so you know what it's like to have sons through elite sports. You know what it's like to play it. You know what it's like to coach it. You've been a GM of many pro organizations. And this is where I met you. This is where I met J.O. was in Bakersfield, California. I'll never forget the day I get a phone call from J.O. and we had one of the greatest conversations, just connected. And I thought, I couldn't believe how encouraging you were when you called me. And so J.O. won my heart over. I ended up playing in Bakersfield, California, and getting to spend a year with him and under his leadership, and huge blessing. But J.O. and I's relationship really took off in 2013 with the Bakersfield Condors organization. And then it's taken off since. And we've been able to do ministry together. We've been able to travel all over, coaching teams, pouring into kids, working with parents. And so J.O. and I have been friends for a handful of years now. And so J.O., thank you so much for joining tonight. And our goal tonight is to speak life into parents. And so I'm gonna throw it to you here, J.O., and just ask what's your heart for tonight? What are you looking forward to? And then I want to ask you about your story growing up.
Awesome. Well, a couple things for you. Thanks for the introduction. First of all, Gary, want to add the year you were with us in Bakersfield was the most successful season in the history of the Bakersfield Condors. So you brought a lot to that organization. If you ever introduce me again, rather than, the 40 years plus thing, I prefer just that J.O.'s kind of rounding third base in his coaching career. I'd kind of prefer that. But yeah, I've got some ties to Dallas. I ran the farm team, American League team for Dallas in Des Moines before it moves to Texas, to Austin. Had the ECHL team, Dallas farm team, for many years in Idaho. It still is the ECHL farm club. So I've got some ties to Dallas. Stu Barnes played for me in the Western League, has been a coach there, and just a lot of Les Jackson's a good friend. So Dallas is a team I pull for, one of the teams. But I appreciate you inviting me on. I know that we're here today to talk about parents, talk about there's sons and daughters. I know this is primarily girls teams, right? Is
Yes.
that right, Gary? Yeah.
Yep.
But I'm
But I'm
sure
sure
some,
many have sons.
sure. I mean, this is really talking about the role of a parent in children. And I think the reason that really, I think it gives me some real insight to this subject is not because I've coached for 40 plus years professionally. It's because I've had two sons, and I've had, I would say on the surface, you would say they were both very successful, both my sons. Both of them are multimillionaires right now, both of them, through their hockey. And you would say, you would say from the surface, many people say, man, your family's really successful. They look up to me. But what they don't know is that even though they've certainly had some success, there was some cracks below the surface that people don't see. And one of the challenges that I think as a parent that we have when our sons or daughters or children are in athletics is, and especially in hockey for some reason, is there's a disease, and it's called hockey parentitis. And many people get inflicted with it. And I know that's true because I'm one of those parents. I was, I wanted my, when growing up, Gary, my dad, I was an only child from Vancouver. My dad was a very good man, pushed me really hard. My mother was angelic. I was an only child, but my dad pushed me really, really hard in everything. Like I know my dad loved me, but I don't ever remember my dad saying, "I love you, John," or "You're special. I'm proud of you." It was always just correcting me and coaching me and pushing me. And one time I brought home, a report card. I was so proud. It was like I was so excited. I was finally going to get approval from my dad. I had 7 A's and 1 B. And we ended up spending about a half an hour on one subject, just what we can do to get that B up to an A. And I know my dad meant well, but it caused me to never gain the approval of my father, which I've learned now after coaching for 40 years is just so important, to get the unconditional love of your father that's not based on any accomplishments, to know that your parents are proud of you for the person you are, not for the athlete you are. And I know my dad did not intentionally do it. He grew up in the Depression. He didn't even know his dad. And I've just learned over the years, Gary, how influential parents can be, and particularly fathers. I'm more in the business of men. I have not caught girls sports, but I know how important I am to my daughter. And it's interesting now when I look back how hard I push my kids, because my dad taught me what it was to be a father. He gave me the game plan for life. He gave me what it was to be successful. And it was all accomplishment based. It was all about performance, because my dad grew up with nothing and he wanted a better life for me. And so he thought he would give me the best he could by push me, work hard. If the going gets tough, the tough get going. You never give up. You never quit. You go. And you know what? If you want to produce a higher achiever, it works, man. It works really well, because I'm a high achiever. I pushed hard my whole life. And then when I became a father, I became the same father my dad has taught me, because one thing I've learned is, role modeling is the most effective form of teaching. My dad would tell me all the time, I remember, he'd say, "Don't do as I do as I say." I've learned something that doesn't work. You have to live it out. John Wooden, probably the greatest coach in the last 100 years. I remember hearing eulogies of him after he died, and heard the way the players talked about him, how they loved him, and how they said he seldom talked about basketball. It was about life things, right? He believed that the first step to becoming the best athlete you can be, step number one is becoming the best person you can be, right? Mm-hmm. That's step one. If that's true, and I believe it's true, then helping our children first, if we want them to be the best athletes they can be, the first step is being the best person they can be, the best version of themselves, right? But we can only lead our children as far down the road as we've gone ourselves, and our character and our what's important. And so it's kind of interesting for me. I look back, because my sons have been hugely successful, Gary, but the relationships that I had in my life suffered. They weren't that, and not suffered, but I would say fell short. I did not have, I've become a Christian much later in life. I got to be 40 and I was winning championships. I was making a lot of money. Teams wanted to hire me. My kids were all doing well. I was living the American dream. I just built a brand new, beautiful home in Tacoma. And like something was missing. Like there's got to be more to life than this. Like every year I'm climbing the same mountain and I'm exhausted and I'm not feeling better about myself. In fact, any success I had, I couldn't enjoy it. Like there was no enjoyment to success. It was just a relief I didn't fail. And it was around that time I started to ask myself, I think the questions that we all ask ourselves at some point, some earlier than others, depending on how their parents have been able to influence them, just like, why am I here? Like, what's my purpose? Where did I come from and where do I go when I die? And I needed to search for the answers to the question. As I started to search for those answers, of course, it pointed me towards church. And I started to really start to dwell, go into that. And it took me a long time to become a committed Christian, but through that process, I've just learned a lot about myself, about my family. 8 years ago, my wife talked about divorcing me. My two sons, even though we had a decent relationship, but I can tell you, they never asked me for advice. I mean, if you asked them about their dad, they would say, yeah, my dad was a good man. He supported me, but he was really hard on me. I could never please him. He was the guy you could never please. So as they got older, like the last thing they wanted to do was ask for advice from this guy that, they resented in some ways. And so there's this resentment there. And on the other hand, what's interesting is I have this incredible relationship with my daughter. And it wasn't intentional. It's that just growing up as a man, my dad was kind of a chauvinist person, which a lot of men were from that generation. I looked at, men were in sports, girls kind of weren't, even though I'd put her in hockey, she didn't do it, but I never put any expectations on my daughter. I didn't push her. I just loved her, supported her in anything she wanted to do. And it's kind of interesting now when I see the relationship with them and my sons, how much difference it is. But I guess the biggest thing I would say, the thing that I've learned is, we need to have a game plan for life. That we have to follow. We do it in sports as a coach. If you're going to be a successful coach, you want to be a champion in athletics. You talk about being a championship parent. You want to be a champion in sports. The first thing you have to do is have a playbook. You got to have an idea of what you want to accomplish. You set your goals and objectives, and then you go out there and you execute them. And when I look back now, the game plan that my dad gave me for my life was the wrong playbook. He didn't intentionally try to do it. He just didn't know what he didn't know. And I love my dad and I forgive him because, he didn't have a father that mentored him in a way that he grew up in the Depression. He was working in a coal mine when he was 15 years old. But as I got older, the one thing that really influenced my life is, one, I became a Christian, which I then learned that life was so much more than just winning hockey games. And it was about relationships in your life, not your accomplishments or your performance. And that isn't to say those aren't important. They are. I mean, you have to have a certain amount of success in life to have a standard of living and support your family. But beyond that, if you want to have real purpose, that comes through your relationship with God. And the thing that really, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, keep going, Jo.
Oh, sorry. So I wanted to show a book here. I would say this book has influenced me, and I would say it's a must read for every single parent alive. It's called The Search for Significance by Dr. Robert McGee. Robert S. McGee. The Search for Significance, and it's the workbook. It's done by Lifeway. There's a book, but this is the workbook. And I'm going to tell you, that was life-changing for me, Gary. Life-changing in that I learned a lot about myself. I kind of figured out why I was this crazy wacko parent. And I knew when I was doing the things that I did, some of them, like pushing them, like those ride homes in the car. I see there's a lot of mothers on this phone, and I've typically found that, mothers don't push as hard as dads, and they're more nurturing and loving. And I think probably object to when dads do that. And I think this book would help a lot of moms to give it to their husbands to read, and they'll learn something about themselves, because the book is written by a prolific therapists. He had 20 treatment centers all around the country dealing with, addictions and drugs and alcohol and relationship issues and depression and all of that stuff. And they brought it all kind of together. He brought it all together to basically say that, they're, in most cases, it's all related to the same thing, Gary. And that is that we all need, as human beings, we need to know that we are loved. We need approval. We need acceptance, right? We need self-worth, self-confidence, self-value. We need that. And most people that I found now, when I understand that, is they try to gain it through their accomplishments in the world, through their performance, through their athletics, through their being the best player. And so that's why they feel so good when they're, when they're playing well and they're on top, or when on the first line or on the power play or whatever it is. And then when they're at the bottom, they're unhappy. They feel like they're not succeeding, especially if their parents are putting high expectations and really pushing them. I see that a ton. I don't think any parents do it intentionally. I don't even think they know why they do it. I know why I did it, because I never gained the love and acceptance and approval from my father. And so I was trying to gain it through sports. And I was trying to gain not just performance, but I was trying to gain the approval of my peers. Like when I got to junior hockey, 17, 18, college, I would do some of the craziest things, Gary, that I would say lack character. Did this because I wanted to be popular with my guys. And you've played on teams, you get there, you want to be popular. You got to be one of those guys that does stuff that probably aren't something now I'd want to share with anybody, right? And but I needed that approval from my teammates. And it drove me. And as I got older, it drove me. And I wanted to always win so I could gain the approval of my peers and get a better job and make more money and do that. And it was like I was on this like a mouse on a wheel, just spinning. I could never get off it. I was just exhausted. But the thing that's interesting, I think profound, that I read recently when talking about that book, Search for Significance, where you have this need, we have all this need. It says there that millions of people, and I would say most people in this world, spend their entire lifetime searching for love, acceptance, approval. Okay? And they do it trying to be successful in the world, but they don't ever understand where that need came from. Like what causes that desire in us? Why do we need that so bad? Right? And obviously you're obviously a strong Christian, as I am. And I understand now because God has put that in us. Because if we search for it anywhere else, we may have moments of happiness. We could have a year of happiness. We could have multiple years of happiness. But at some point, we're going to hit that low point because you're never on top all the time. And when that happens, you live this life of an emotional roller coaster, up and down and up and down and up and down. And I know now with parents why they push so hard is because they're trying to gain some of their significance through the success of their children in sports. Mm-hmm. And I know that's true because that's what I did. I didn't know it at the time. I just knew it was so important to me that they were the best. Mm-hmm. And so,
well, JL, let me chime in. Let me chime in real quick here. So hearing you share your story and share some of these discoveries and some of these things, it's fascinating. So your search for significance as a player, played out where you were going to be the best you could be, but you ended up chasing approval of people. You fought to be the best you could as an athlete. Your worth and your value was tied to who you were as an athlete, and it drove you, and you achieved because you thought in those days, really, success is truly achievement. I got to do this, and I need my dad's approval. So this is you growing, whether you consciously or subconsciously thought these things, this is what you're realizing now drove you. But then when you transferred into being a coach, it came with you into that world. And then as you had kids and they became athletes, it transferred with you into that world to where this drive to achieve, this drive to be significant, these things that drove you as a player and as a young man became you as a coach, became you as a parent, and it just started taking different shapes. But you drove your kids as hard because you wanted them to succeed. And that was like this whole pursuit went with you all the way through. And I hear you share that. I hear you share that story. And so for you, like, would you agree that maybe your definition of success as a player, as a coach, as a parent was we got to achieve and we got to be the best and we need to, like, that was really maybe your perspective on success? Would you agree with that?
100%. Well, it's the American dream too. Like, my dad, well, I wanted to have a nicer home. I wanted to provide for my family, right? I wanted to be able to give them the best of everything. I thought that's what a father's, that was my role, but it was, it is, and certainly being a provider is part of it. But as I'm
Yeah.
63 now, I know that it's a much lower priority than it was when I was younger. And
Right.
the other thing, just to add, Gary, that's interesting, when you put performance as that important in your life, what happens is you live in fear. There's
Hmm.
this fear, constant fear of failure. Like, I'm not going to be good enough today. I'm going to lose this game. You get into a close game, you start getting nervous and tight, like, because it's so important. But if you really think about it, like, you lose a hockey game, is it really that big a deal? Like, you end up putting so much more importance on it than what it should be. And so
Hmm.
I lived in constant fear of not living up to this, almost like perfectionist. It almost, I think it forces children to be perfectionists. Okay. Even my oldest son now, who's in the process of retiring, had to get counseling because of the anxiety he had. And I suffer from anxiety, and so it's not, we know that, Gary, that life is not about accomplishments. That's not the focus. It's about relationships, because I know accomplishments aren't that important. And certainly money isn't that important, because when we leave this earth, we don't take any of it with us, but we do take the relationships. And so, that
Yeah,
it's
but it's
been a
still
lifelong process for
challenging.
me to learn that stuff.
It's still challenging because this is the current of society. This is the current of the
Correct.
world we live in. It's like you drive and you be the best and you get on top, and that's the current of society. So let me ask this: when you're in that place, okay, and your sons have a bad game, and they had a bad game,
Yeah.
what would go through your head in those days that you would wrestle with how to respond? Because here you are, you're a coach, you're an elite athlete, you've been drafted to the NHL, you know what it takes, and at the same time, you're this parent, and what goes through your head when your kids have a bad game in those days? What would you wrestle? Like, how would you navigate that?
Well, I would be a coach, not a father. It was just it was critical. And I definitely complimented them on the things they did well. But the thing that I learned, Gary, they don't remember any of the compliments. They only remember the criticisms. You could give, they only remember just the criticism. And, that's not the role of a father
Hmm.
or a mother to coach. It's to encourage. I mean, I think it even goes beyond that. Like, what is the purpose of playing sports? Why play sports? What is the purpose? For me, it was really to get a scholarship, to play, try to play as high as you could, and hopefully play in the NHL and do something, because I failed and I wanted them to succeed. And I was convinced I was doing it for them. But when I look back now that I've really done some self-awareness, self-evaluation, it wasn't about them. It was about me, right?
Hmm.
Me needing that. And I really think, that you have to ask the question, why do you play sports? I mean, I know what I was, but I know what the right answer is. We should play sports because we love the game, that it's enjoyable, that we provide, life lessons to our children. It's to build character. It's to learn how to be a teammate and learn how to be selfless rather than selfish. The problem is when you focus on your performance. And here's the biggest thing, like, it's kind of crazy when I really understand it and think about it. Here we are as parents trying to help our children become the best version of themselves, which means being loving and kind and serving their friends, right? And being a good friend and all those things, right? And yet we put them into a sport that that is all about performance, which causes you to be self-focused, to think just about yourself. Look at others. How are they doing? How am I doing? It causes jealousy, all those types of things, especially if the parents are thinking that way. So if I think it starts with, why are we playing sports? Why are we doing it? If they end up getting a scholarship, to me, or play beyond that, it's just a bonus. It should never be. It's just an extra bonus. but it should never be the focus.
So it's really important.
And here's the other thing, like, somebody's got to play on the fourth line. Somebody's got to be a healthy scratch some games. Not everybody can play on the power play. Does that mean that they're failing? Does that mean they're not doing well? I'll just tell you one quick story. I was coaching a player one time. His name was Jack. I love Jack. Jack was the best teammate ever. The players loved him. He did not have a selfish bone in his body. Nobody worked harder. I loved him, but he didn't have a lot of talent. So Jack played on the fourth line on our team, but in my eyes was a valuable player. And I wanted, as a coach, I want to build players up. I want to lift them up. So I would tell him every day, Jack, I love you. Like, we love you. You are a great teammate. You are so selfless. Nobody plays defense harder than you. And it was all real. I would tell him that. And I got a call from his quote advisor one time and saying, John, like, want to talk to you about Jack because his parents are confused. Like, he says, you're sending him mixed messages. I said, really? Why is that? He said, well, every day you build him up and tell him how valuable he is to the team, but he never plays on the power play. And so what I found is, I consider myself now a transformational coach. I help players see them to become the best version of themselves, but it's a challenge, Gary, because when they go home, for a lot of them, they get a coach telling them a completely different message.
Interesting. I like how you word that. They get a coach at home telling them a completely different message. That's interesting.
They're contradicting me. They're contradicting what I'm trying to teach them in terms of what it is to be successful in life. What is true success in life, right?
And this is really the transformation that happened for you is as you started to realize, okay, I'm driving my sons. There are some consequences that are coming, some relational consequences that are happening. There are some things that you're noticing, family-wise. You mentioned that every year it'd be like climbing the same mountain over again. And even if I won, it wasn't as much excitement about winning. It was relief I didn't fail.
There was no enjoyment, Gary, zero.
Yeah, so this is you. You're living this life. You're climbing these mountains. You're starting to recognize that you're kind of maybe missing the mark. Like, what is there? What else is there? And that kind of went through your transition into becoming a Christian, to realizing that there's more in life, and it started transforming you as a coach and as a parent. And so, talk to us about that, the kind of the transformation that's happened, and where are you at now with your sons?
Yeah, well, a couple of things that I've learned too through my. I work with FCA now, as you know, Gary, and I actually mentor coaches. One of the coaches we've mentored, or we have many Division I college coaches. Brad Larson, the head coach of Columbus, strong Christian man, was in our one of our groups last year. So this is something that works at every level, right? But the thing that I've learned that I think is really important for parents to understand is, if you're a believer and if you want to, teach your son what it is to have a relationship with God, whatever your denomination is, that our children gain a perception of the character of God by the character and personality of their parents. So, for instance, if my dad taught me it was all about performance, it was all about your accomplishments, and they loved him was conditional, right? Not saying he didn't love me, but he certainly wasn't as nice to me when I didn't play up to his expectations. And so for me, as I tried to grow my relationship with God, and even to this day, I can't believe that God could love me because I'm still falling short, right? Or that it's got to be based on my performance. And I think that the thing that a lot of parents don't understand, to become a spiritual leader in their family, they have to respect God's love. And the more we understand God's word and if we live by it, the more our feelings and actions will reflect God's character and his love. And I know that if some people aren't on this phone are not people of faith, they may not understand what I'm talking about. And this is not this call today is not just about that, but for me, it was life-changing for me, becoming a Christian, learning that my identity is not in my performance, that I'm created in the image of God, and I know where I came from. I know why I'm here. I know where I'm going when I die. There's an inner peace in me now. I love people now so much greater. I mean, I love people now. I mean, my wife, 8 years ago, my wife talked about possibly divorcing me. And it wasn't that we had a bad marriage. We just weren't, we just weren't in love with each other. We were wounded. I mean, we were both wounded, and neither one of us had a relationship with God. And when that happens, I think you blame each other for feeling bad. Like it's her fault. I can remember saying, you don't show me enough love. Well, it's true, but it's hard for me to love somebody else when I don't even love myself, or I have no relationship with God. And so, you know, since I've become a Christian and a follower, I've gotten involved with FCA and really, really learned a lot. Willie went through a time of went inside myself and turned on the lights. And then I really started to look at, why do I feel this way? And that book, Search for Significance, I can't tell you how important it is. And I think that I'd be shocked if every person that read this book didn't really learn something from it, whether it be about themselves or understand more about maybe their spouse, or understand maybe if they're in coaching or in business or whatever, understand their employees or their coworkers. Like at FCA now, we'll work together, the coaches, and so we'll have an issue with a parent or a player or something will happen, and we'll instantly we'll just say search for significance. That just explains it. We just now we understand them. We understand why they act the way they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm happy to say my life has changed. My life could not be better.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your relationship with your sons.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So before I tell you, with my oldest son, I wouldn't say it was a bad relationship, but it fell short. And now it's been restored. It's being healed, and he's starting to understand his dad. And he can see the change, like when he sees now that people are actually giving me an award for coaching or naming an award in my honor. I mean, this group does not know me, but trust me when I tell you, if you would have known me 30 years ago and you saw a trophy with my name on it, you'd be going, man, they must have been desperate for a guy to put their name on it. But really, it's not a compliment to me to have this award named after me. It's actually the opposite, because it really just says that somebody that gets it as wrong as he did and had as low character as he did can be transformed, can be changed. And it's really just the legacy of the transformational powers of Jesus. And I know that it works because it's changed every relation in my life. My son Darren now, he wants to coach with me. He's going to finish playing professional hockey. He's had a 15-year career over in Germany. He was the Germans were the silver medalists in the last Olympics, not this one, but it's a great league. He was the league most valuable player, led the league in scoring, and he won that championships, had a great career. He's going to retire. He wants to work with me. He wants his dad to mentor him now. This guy that he could never please, that he resented, now he wants to work with him. I mean, I can't tell you how good that makes me feel, and to have a second chance maybe to get it right. My youngest son I probably had the most strained relationship with, just because he was just a guy that kind of beat to his own drum, and he did his own thing, and I pushed him, and he ended up, having great success. He was an All-American, first team All-American, played the Hobie Baker finalist, one of the top 10 finalists his junior year, and then came out of college early and signed with Colorado and played parts of 4 seasons with Colorado before he ended up going to Germany too. But he sent me a text, not this past summer, but the summer before, saying something to the effect of, "Thank you, Dad, for finally becoming the father that I've desperately craved for." And it's sad, really. I mean, it hurts my heart to think that I had an opportunity to be a father one time and I fell short. I wasn't a bad father. I was just a wounded father. And I lacked knowledge. I lacked knowledge about myself. I didn't know, again, millions of people spend their lifetime searching for love, acceptance, approval, success, without ever understanding where the need comes that causes that desire. I know where that desire comes from now. I know where that desire comes from. It was put into me by God intentionally, because ultimately, until you realize that and gain your identity through Him, you will struggle. You will have ups and downs. You will have moments of happiness, and you may fall short as a parent. And now I've just learned, and all of my relationship, my daughter, my grandchildren, I told some of my kids, I may have fallen short as a dad, but I'm not going to fall short as a grandfather. So I have great relationships now with my families. I've learned a lot, and I can't change what happened when my children were younger, but I can use that knowledge and that story hopefully to help other parents not make the same mistake that I made. Like if my sons or daughters were that age and they came off a sports field and they asked me how they were doing, I would never criticize them again. I wouldn't comment. You don't want to lie though. If they played poorly, you don't want to say, hey, you played really good. That would be a lie and they would know it. And it would be, not sincere. I would just say, you know what? I just love to watch you play. And I love you. I love you. It doesn't matter how you play because I love you and I'm proud of you and you're special to me. There's not another daughter in this world I'd rather have than you. And I saw something in the game. There's something in that game that you saw that you could find a compliment. Like I saw one time that girl fell down and you picked her up, or you encouraged your teammate, or you went and got the water bottles. Like I saw you being a great teammate because life's about being selfless. I believe the reason we're on this earth is that we have to learn how to love and we have to learn to serve others. Because if we're going to go to heaven, heaven is a community where all the members live to serve each others. That's why we need a servant's heart. And it's hard to do that when we live in a sports world where it's not about serving others. It's about what can I get out of this? What can I accomplish? What am I going to get? And how can I be better than the next person? It becomes selfish rather than serving others and becoming, self-focused, it causes you to be self-focused. You become others focused, which is what you want.
Mm-hmm. So Jo, let me ask this. If you were to take these things that you're discovering now, and you and I have some great conversations about this, just with all the things we've done working with teams and parents and the unique circumstances and understanding the pressures of sport. And we fully get it. We understand it. We acknowledge the pressures that all these parents feel. If you were to take these discoveries that you're recognizing, about what success is as a parent, what success is as a person, what is the purpose behind everything that we're doing. One of the things we talk about all the time is the importance of this unconditional love toward kids. And like you said earlier, like this wrestle between being a coach or a parent, like which one wins? And how do you handle those circumstances that are difficult? And we're leaning toward, man, it's about loving our kids unconditionally way before we coach our kids. And so as we kind of wrap that up, you're discovering these things. What if you were a parent of your boys and they were starting right now? What would you do differently? How would you handle bad games? Elaborate on that. What would you do as a parent today if your kids were starting over?
Well, I'd like to think that I would have a different purpose. Getting back, I would rethink that purpose for why I even put it in. I mean, back then when they went in hockey, it was to make them NHL players. I mean, from day one, from the time they could get on, make them the best they could be. And so I'd have a different perspective and priority for why I have them in sports to begin with. To love the game, to enjoy it, to work hard. Yeah, you still want to be the best you can be. I mean, you still want to strive to be the best and be a scholarship and play in the NHL. It's done to do that, but it's not necessarily the focus. It's about becoming the best person you can be. That's the foundation that the player is built on, right? And then becoming the best athlete you can be becomes a byproduct of being the best person.
Yeah, and your lens that you talk with them through, that you work with them on, is not performance. It's not through the performance lens. It's through the unconditional love of a parent that believes in their son or their daughter, and you encourage them to be the best they can be. But their performance has nothing to do with how you view them, and they would know that.
It's about character development. I mean, it's about character development. You want to be men or women of character, of integrity, of compassion, of love, right? Teaching them to do that. And how do you teach them to do that? You gotta live it. You gotta demonstrate it. I mean, you have a responsibility as a parent. They can't become the best version of themselves if you're not the best version of yourself. And as a parent, and now even me, I'm 63 as a coach, I ask myself each day, what am I doing to get better, right? Because if our job is to lead, our sons and daughters down the road to success, we can only travel, we can only help them travel down that road as far as we travel ourselves. Like I said, it's not about don't do as I do as I say doesn't work. We got to demonstrate it, right? How we live our life, what we say, our words, our actions. And more importantly than even actions, Gary, it's reactions. Like what happens at a game when something bad happens or something happens where, it's easy to be a good person when everything's going well, but what happens if things are going bad? How do you react to trials and tribulations and storms? Because that really is the test of your character.
Yeah, come on. That's really well said, Jo. Very well said. So the power, we have to lead by example. And in that, our kids, like some others would say, more is caught than is taught. Like you're saying, we have to lead by example. Now, what if one of the parents on our call maybe relates to you in regards to, man, I think I might be making some of those things, doing some of the things you're doing, and maybe I'm kind of missing the mark myself. What have you done to try to change the tide, to turn and make things right or start doing things different? How do you get to a point where your son texts you that thank you for becoming the father I always wish I had? How do you turn that tide? If there's a parent on this call that maybe wants to make a change, what would you
Well,
do?
I mean, I think to some degree, there's lots of self-help books out there to make you a better person, Gary. I mean, there's lots of things on TV and there's lots of books. You can get a New York bestseller, How to Become the Best Version of Yourself, the key to success, all those types of things. But for me, the best self-help book ever written was the Bible. And I really don't know how you can ever truly become the best version of yourself until you become a committed Christian, because you can't do it yourself. Like you can't, it's all about the heart, Gary. It's all about the heart. You know that. It's all about our hearts. Our hearts create how we feel, how we think, how we act, how we react. It comes from the heart, right? A lot of people have a wounded heart. I had a wounded heart. I needed it healed, Gary. But we can't heal our hearts on our own, right? We can't fix our hearts. We can't change our hearts. Only God can change our hearts. What we have to do is make a decision. It comes in our mind. It's like, is our life good? Do we want to have a change? Could it be better? Is this something that I want, right? It comes with a decision we make in our minds if we do it. And that's what I did. I made a decision in my mind that I wanted something better, something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked God to come in my life because only He can change my heart. It's with the Holy Spirit, and it's what's happened with me. I know that's true. First of all, because I saw it with others, and that was what drew me to it. I saw some people I knew where I saw the change in them that brought me to it. And then now I've done it myself. And this low character guy that had hockey paranoiditis, wife wanted to divorce him, kids were successful, but not in the most important ways in terms of relationships with their father. And now I have the best marriage I could ask for. My wife's healed too. She's gone through a transformational process. My relationship with my sons, my relationship with my daughter, my relationship with my players that I coach. I've never been a better coach, but my focus no longer is on winning. It's on loving others, serving others, helping others, caring about my compassion for others. And in the process, I still work hard and the success is that much greater, but it becomes a byproduct of that. It's not the focus.
So good, Jo. How did you redeem your relationship with your son? Did you call and apologize? Did you call and own something? Did you just start acting different? Did you start living this out yourself and invite him to join you, or just lead by example and let him see it? How did you do it?
I think he's known that I'm sorry, but really, I think I told my wife and I both regretted some of the things. My wife was hard. We were both hard on kids, both of us. Our parents were strict. They disciplined us sometimes physically. So we were those types of parents, thought we were being good parents. And I've talked to my wife a lot about it. I mean, we just have to change. Like we have to just show the transformational powers of Jesus that we're different people now. And they'll see it. And they'll see it. And so that's been one thing. But I do know one of the last time I saw my son recently, maybe in the last couple of months, we were together, we spent some time together. And I said, Darren, I'm curious. I'd like to ask you a question. When I was your father and you were growing up, how did I make you feel? How did I make you feel as a person, as a son? And he shared some things with me again that were really hard for me to hear. I felt terrible. And so I just encourage maybe the parents on it, maybe we have great parents on here and no one needs it, but I do know that I've seen a lot of fathers that have been, what's the word I want to say, off center a little bit. And I see wives, and I know sometimes when I give this speech, a lot of times I'll be in rooms where I can see people's faces, and wives will be sitting by husbands. And as I'm giving this message, the wives keep turning and glaring at their husband, saying like, kind of like, yeah, that's you. Yeah, that's you. You know, I would encourage wives and mothers, if they see this happening, to stand up. I mean, for their children, and say, this is not right, right? This is not how we want to treat our children. You're reflecting the character of God when you do that to them, and you can either help your children or you can wound them. You know, that's really what it boils down to. And I don't want to see anybody else unnecessarily, or even probably in more cases unintentionally. Like my case, I had the best of intentions with my children. Trust me, I was a committed father. I never missed a game. There was nothing I wouldn't do for my kids, but I unintentionally hurt them.
So becoming a championship parent in many ways is about really fighting, this personal transformation of ourselves, to recognize what in our hearts is driving us to act and do the things that we do, the ways that we treat our kids, the things that we believe about success, the way we drive our children. This is really coming out of the heart of ourselves. And so, like, as we begin this, transformational journey ourselves, that's going to then lay over into our kids. And we can still, I love what you said, we can still fight to help our kids achieve their dreams. We can still fight to help them, do great and make the NHL or make the Olympics or play college hockey. Like that's okay to do, but to recognize the way that we do that and how we communicate what is important. Do I love you because of your performance, or do I love you because of you? And I want to fan your flame. Like what is the way that we approach our kids, and how do we support them? Like, it's critical, but the way that we do it, it starts with us. It starts with us.
Yes, and just understanding the influence that we have over our children. Like I've coached some great men, Gary, in my day, like great men. I've never had a great man, a special man that didn't have a special one. And if I get a young man that's kind of off center, got some issues, and then I meet his mother, in most cases, it's like, now I understand. Like, mothers really influence the character, confidence of their son, special characteristics. I mean, moms play a huge role, and they can, and dads sometimes can be challenging to it too. Obviously, having a big effect like it did in my life, because my mother was an awesome woman, but she would never stand up to my dad. Like, my dad kind of ruled our family, and so yeah, I think it's important we understand how influential we are, how important it is that we're role models, that we're giving our sons or daughters the right playbook for life. Like, what is success? What is success? What are the most important things in life? And once you define that, when it comes to sports, then your actions, your words, everything you do will be consistent with that, not inconsistent. Right?
100%.
Like, if it's about relationship, if it's about serving others, if it's about being a good person, being a great teammate, if that's really what the most important thing is, and yet, I mean, for me, those ride homes from the game when I played poorly, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Those were the worst things in my life growing up, when I had to listen to my dad basically go up one side of me and down the other every ride home. So it was being consistent. So I think it's about being consistent and just keeping a focus. And again, I don't know how you become the best version of yourself if you're not living a Christ-centered life. I think you can certainly have some level of success, but certainly not to the level. I mean, I have a trophy now named after me that will be presented here at the end of April to a Division One or three NCAA coach, the John Olver FCA Hockey Character Coach Award. How I could have earned that would be impossible. This is really just a testament to the powers of Jesus. I don't want to spend too much on that, but I think that's really the message, Gary.
Yeah.
So I'd love to open it up here, Gary. We've been on, I think, an hour here now. Maybe we could just open up for any questions.
100%. I would love to do that. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, yeah, let's do that. Let's open up to any of the parents that are here. Is there any questions maybe that you would want to ask and that we can deal with? And then go ahead and unmute yourself. You can ask a question, and we'll spend the last couple minutes here doing that. You can put it in the chat bar too if you'd like. If you'd
Yeah.
prefer doing that, we can just have you put it in the chat bar. That's fine.
What that means, Gary, is that we either have no parents on the phone that have hockey parentitis, or they all have it and they just don't want to speak.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
one or
yeah.
the other.
Right. Yeah. Oh
Hi,
man.
hello. There's a lady here. I'm seeing a
Yeah,
picture.
I know. I see it. They're muted. Yep.
Are you trying to talk?
No, I just wanted to thank you. It was great. It was great information. If you can actually send us the name of the book that you were showing, it was hard to see from the
Sure.
camera.
Yep. We
Love
can do
to.
that.
Love to do
100%.
it.
Yep.
So as you guys were talking, we were I had my son listening, and he was just reflecting on the whole topic. He's like, because he's older, and he's reflecting on it. And I was thinking, when we talk about the piece of the spiritual part and all of that, he said, it would be nice if our coaches didn't have the practices during church time, and we stopped going to church when we started doing travel hockey. And I'm like, you got a point. But but
You're
it's
right.
not, but you can't really argue with that ever, because it's ice time, right? You get it when you get it. But no,
Right.
we were talking, as you guys were talking, we were reflecting on the things that we stopped doing as much as a family because of hockey,
Right.
because of the demands, because of the travel, and we were going when they were little to the
Right.
church and spending more time on that as a family. And that kind of sort of took the back door because of hockey and the demands of the sport.
Sure.
So that was the one thing we were reflecting on. So like you said, there's other ways, literature and trying to figure out other options, but that has been really difficult to, as a family, to continue to develop. And so whatever we can do at home
Yeah.
is
Very
what it
good.
is.
Yeah.
Very good point. Thank you.
That was one
Yeah.
of the reflections we did together as listening to you guys. It's
That's
like,
wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really wonderful. Yeah, J.O., one of the things that I think of that I love that you shared tonight is you talked about how you've become a transformational coach.
Yeah.
Transformational coach. And it gets me to thinking about, we talk about being this championship parenting for our athletes. Like, what about like the idea of being a transformational parent before we're a transactional parent? Right, a transactional coach or a transactional parent would be one that if our kids play good or if our players play good, we're happy with them. And if they don't play good, if they don't accomplish, if they don't do what we expect of them, then we're upset. That it's just our relationship with them really rides the roller coaster of performance. But the transformational coach, the transformational parent, is one that is more focused on making a championship son or daughter before a championship level athlete. And you're really speaking to that and how it started with you and the transformation internally, but then you have now become that as a coach,
Right.
as a parent, and it's changing things. And if we're going to take a huge takeaway from tonight, for me, Jo, that's a huge takeaway, because I want to be that kind of parent. And I want to be that, as my kids get older and they get involved and we go through some of this too. And, with that, any last words, Jo, any last encouragement?
Just to the transformational part. I mean, it says in the Bible that unless you're born again, you will not see the kingdom of God. You will not go to heaven. You will not spend eternity in heaven with God. And, some people, for many years, I had trouble understanding that. I'm not sure I believed it. And, I talked to a lot of people this some of the time. I said, well, two things. It's either right or it's wrong. That's either true or it's not true. I'd rather believe it and follow it. And if I'm right, I'm going to spend eternity in heaven rather than be wrong and regret it for eternity. Like there's nothing, to me, it's all upside, no downside. And so, but I've also seen the transformation that happens in your life when you do. So I think as a parent, I believe now the most important thing, our role is not to teach them to be hockey players. It's to prepare them to leave this earth for eternity and to be prepared. For me, it's not about planning for retirement. I'm planning for eternity. And I think we need to do that for our children too. And if we're going to do that, we have to help them be reborn. We have to transform them. But if that's the goal and you want to help transform your sons or daughters, then you better become transformed first. The first step of transforming someone else, you have to be transformed first. That's step one.
Wow.
And that's what I've done the last 4 years of my life at FCA, national headquarters of FCA North Star, why I left the coaching profession at 59 years old, where it had been my career and it became my calling in life because I wanted to become transformed and I needed to dedicate my life to that. And once I have, I can tell you, I wish I would have done it 40 years ago because my life would have been a lot different. I don't regret it. It is what it is. I can't change it. But I want to share that story with others if they are a lot younger, not to make the same mistakes that I made.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jo, in closing, I'm going to pray for you in a second, close us out. But you run a couple of last minute things. You run a call for dads, for fathers of elite athletes. Can you please just share what that is? And if anybody on this call wants to get involved with that,
they can't do that. What I was sharing with you, Gary, is that kind of what I said to you earlier. It was hard. We found it hard in coaching up at North Star. We have an academy for 2 men's teams, and we just felt it would be more beneficial if we could bring fathers alongside us to be as in co-coaches and understand what we're teaching their sons, so that they're sending the same messages. And so we invited them to a dad's call, where we basically were teaching them that book, Search for Significance. And we did that last year. This year, we're doing a new book called The Game Plan for Life by Joe Gibbs, the one that Brad Larson, the head coach of Columbus, said changed his life. So we're studying that book together. It's about developing. It's about, if you want to, help your sons, you need to also help yourself and become, if you're going to, we have to work at becoming a better person. And it takes work and time and commitment. And we need the fellowship of other men that can help us. Iron sharpens iron, just like you've done with me, Gary.
Yes.
Right.
All right. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yes. So they can't join, but if they want to follow in what you're doing, the impact.
Well, I would just encourage them to read that book. The workbook doesn't require any expert teaching. You read the book; it's really simple.
So parents,
we'll send it out, and we'll send it out to all these parents.
So parents, as we wrap up, I'm going to pray for Jo here and close us out. But as we wrap up, so we will send out all the information about these books that we've discussed. We'll send out a link to this video being recorded. I'm going to upload this audio clip to a podcast I run called the Pure Encouragement Podcast. So if you want to check that out, you'll see it there. That'll be uploaded here soon. And parents, we just commend you. We commend you in all of the things that you're navigating through and wrestling through and doing for your daughters and for your sons and helping them as athletes. We know the pressures that you feel. I pray that today there was something you could take that would be beneficial, something that would be encouraging, something practical that you can apply, whether it's starting your own personal transformation journey or whether it's just how you respond to your kids, about whether it's achievement focused or unconditional love and just how you handle those bad games. We want to build our kids up to know that it has nothing to do with their performance first. It's all about how we view them, about character and about bigger things in life than just sports. And so I hope you're able to take something. Jo and I would be the first to admit we do not have it all together. We are definitely not perfect at this. We are growing. So we're in this with you. But as a measure of encouragement, I pray you're able to take something from this. So
Gary, can I just add one more thing? Just one more thing, which is a little bit different topic as I'm talking to these parents. Just one last thing. I know through the course of athletics, there's going to be years or times where your son or daughter is going to be with a coach that maybe you think is not seeing the same potential in your son or daughter that you think they have. And it's frustrating to you. And the coach is maybe not playing as much, or your son or daughter are frustrated, or they're not, maybe they think the coach doesn't care for them. Whatever that is, it's going to happen at some point. And I just want to tell you that, to encourage you to understand that that's part of the process. And rather than to be upset about it, look at it as an opportunity to really coach your son or daughter, and encourage them, first of all, to go talk to the coach. Like, the last thing you want to do when they're having trouble is get involved and go talk to the coach yourself. If your son or daughter is having a problem, really teach them. We're talking about life lessons here. You have a problem in life, have them go talk to the coach. Just want to ask you a question. Why is this? Why is that? Whatever, just ask and work it out. And then the worst thing that happens is they fail. Like, they fail miserably and they have a terrible season. And I will tell you, I hope that doesn't happen, but it happens a fair bit. And it's okay. Like, I had one of the worst seasons when I was 16 through hockey. I played on the top AAA team my whole life. And when I got to 16, new coaches came in and they didn't see the value in me. I mean, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. They didn't see, and they put me on the B team. And it was crushing. And the next year I played up again, but I went to junior A hockey, and I got cut by 3 teams. I got released. And I met failure on a few occasions. And then it just fueled me, though. It fueled my fire. And I ended up, setting a league scoring record 2 years later in the BC Junior Hockey League. But I think failure along the way is an important part of the development process, because it becomes the fertilizer to success later. And I think you need to look at failure sometimes from a different perspective, that it's actually good, learning how to overcome obstacles, learning how to overcome failure, and giving your son or daughter the tools to do that, because at some point they're going to face it, Gary, right? If you're not prepared for it, the first time you fit failure is at 21 years old when you're at Miami University, you're not going to know how to handle it. So don't look at failure always as a bad thing, and use it and think of ways that you can use it to train and teach your son or daughter how to overcome it.
I love it.
And ultimately, that failure will be good for them, because they'll decide too if they really want it bad enough. Because they'll either say, you know what, I don't want this, I'm going to quit, and that's okay. Or you know what, I do, and it will fuel them and take their determination to a whole other level, which happened to me, and it happened to my youngest son. He was having a struggle in Omaha in the USHL at Christmas time, thought the coach didn't like him, called home looking for sympathy. A lot of parents in that situation will say, gee, yeah, the coach is being unfair to my son. Let's bring him home. Let's send him to another team. Let's get him to another organization. And I was like, no, hey, if it's not working there, then you need to figure out what you're not doing to satisfy this coach. You go ask him, you find out, whatever he tells you to do, you do it. And that's not what he wanted to hear from me at the time. But I see too often parents feel the pain of the heartache of their sons or daughters, and they take it, then they get frustrated with the coach because of it. And I don't think coaches necessarily ever try to do it intentionally, but they do. And when they do, again, look at it from a different perspective in the future, because it's an important part of how they handle it. And parents are the key to getting them to handle it the right way.
I think that's great encouragement. I think it's great encouragement. And it makes me think in my playing career, and I think about my parents. My parents, it was always my decision to play. It was always my decision. And like you said, when those moments of failure hit, does the parent step in and try to fix the situation and avoid the failure, or does it really bring the child to a point where they have to make the decision whether they want it or they don't? And my parents, they let me face those moments, and they supported me. They took me everywhere. They loved on me like crazy. And my parents would probably say that they weren't perfect in what they did, but I look back, it was always my decision. I knew I could quit at any moment and they would still love me. And that for me actually set me free. And when those moments of failure hit, I became resilient because I wanted to play. It wasn't about my parent. It was me. I was driving my parents to the rink. I was like, you've got to take me. I was crushed if I couldn't go. But I always had the freedom to say no. And I think that's a really good point you make, J.O.
It's funny you say that too, because one thing that just came to mind, I've been working at a prep school the last few years, and it costs a fair bit of money to play prep hockey. I'm sure it costs a fair bit of money for your sons and daughters. And I say, so, I know this is a women's team, but I'm sure some of you have sons too that play. And, it costs a lot of money to play AAA hockey, a lot of travel. And I know with some of the players, when they get towards graduating from high school, some of them I could tell were really emotionally down. And I said, what's the matter? You're like, why? You're doing a great job. You're a great team. He said, well, I just feel like I'm letting my parents down. Like I know how much money they've invested in me to do this, and I'm not going to be able to reach, I'm afraid, the level of what I think they wanted from me or trying to help me get to. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. As a parent too, sometimes that's the way our children feel or think.
100%.
Anyway, any other questions before we wrap it up here? Any other questions?
Yeah, we'll open it up for a second. If you don't hear from me, I'm going to pray this thing out.
Let's wrap it up here, Gary.
Okay, Lord, I just thank you for J.O. I thank you so much for tonight. I bless these parents that we get to spend some time with tonight and pray for just favor on them as they navigate these difficult waters. We bless J.O., Lord. Just thank you so much for him and his kindness and his generosity to come share tonight. We bless him and his sons. We bless him and his career and all that he's doing. And we just thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, parents, thank you so much for joining tonight.
Thank you.